I got to hear a statement that I'm very curious about, which was the following. In the next 40 years, we will need to produce more food than we did since the agricultural revolution. This is cumulatively, yes? Okay, so every time I hear statements, is the statement clear?
So
Like they say, okay, humanity through agriculture in the next 40 years, 4 decades, will need to be producing more yield, more food than in all the history from since agriculture was invented. And every time I hear such statements, I'm really curious. Is it true? Very often, like people just, when there's a good statement and somebody, charismatic says it, you go with them and that's fine. I'm actually more in the opinion that, I'm enjoying, trying to see if it's a myth or it's really a fact. Usually it's a fact, but it's correct, but sometimes it's not. And the question is, how would I know? Okay, we could think about it, like whether it matters whether it's calories or mass. I would think that at least to the level of accuracy that I'm interested in, it doesn't matter so much. Because we're talking about the food to be produced versus the food that has been produced. So if the ratio of calories to weight did not change super significantly, if we're growing kind of the same things or always then I don't think it would matter so much. The question is still, how do we do what's known as a sanity check? Okay, so I want to get your help in doing what is called a sanity check. Where we try to see if this makes sense or not. And sanity checks will take all sorts of types and flavors, so every time it might be a bit different, or sometimes it's kind of the same. So let's try and do one of them. So how do we do that? Yeah.
First, find the time that it's these 40 years versus 20,000 years, and then find the amount of people from here to the next 40 years. So the cumulative or the total number of mouth fed, and then you can do per day or per year kind of thing. And then you can do the same thing for the last 20,000 years. And I think that's about it, right?
Okay, so let's try and do it together. Okay, so that's the spirit of what I think we should do. So let's start, what is easier to do? From now, next 40 years, or now, last, between the agricultural, what is easier for you?
I think
okay, we go forward. Always look forward. Okay, so we have, so let's do it this way. So we have 4 times 10, 10 to the 2, 4 times 10 years. And then we need to multiply it by what?
8.
Number of people. 8 billion.
10 billion?
Okay, let's do 10 billion. Because I don't know if it's going to stay 10 billion. So it's 10 to the 10 people. Okay, so we're getting about 4 times 10 to the 11 person year. Okay, I've introduced here these funny units, person year, which are actually pretty useful. It's I need to sustain this number, 410 to the 11 person across a year. Okay, and then I don't care so much whether it's many people for a few years or less people for many years. it's kind of like, it's a good unit to work with. Okay, person year. See next time you use it. Remember, you learned it here. Okay, so what about population growth? So I kind of like included it in the fact that I say, today we have 8 billion. I took 10 billion. So I think, it includes population growth. And in a way, you'll see like, assuming you don't think it will be 100 billion or that will go down to 1 billion, for doing a sanity check, everything goes in the range of like 8, 10, anything somewhere between there.
It might actually not be true though, right? Because this is an exponential growth, and in the case that it is, I have no idea, but I don't know how many people are expected for 2040. It might be another order of magnitude, and then we might be missing an order of magnitude here.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just saying that. Might
Okay.
Not take
Not in 40 years span though.
I don't know.
Okay, so it's very good that you raise this in the sense that, like as you say, like I don't know, like you say you don't know, but this is like the course where we learn how to know. Okay, so this thing also and it relates also, I think your point comes from this thing of like the statement of exponential growth, which is something that's being hammered into our mind. It's like exponential growth, who knows what's going to happen, like it's, everything could happen. So I'm just suggesting, let's take it easy with exponential. It depends. On some things, exponential growth could do a huge thing. In some things, exponential growth, just like linear growth, because if you're looking close enough, there's not much of a difference. I think I've shown that, maybe at some point. But like if you look at a graph that looks like this, which is exponential, if you're only interested at some time interval like this, and you look inside, it's not very different, the exponential from a linear, if you just do like, you linearize it. Okay, so in that respect, this exponential versus linear, like this issue of exponential, we should see what is the domain over which we're looking. And specifically for the next 40 years, I think humanity is actually very close to being at a state where the population is stabilizing at about 10 billion. And I think that's the estimate for, at least until 2100, that like we're going to stay within this range, and then probably it will be going down. And I was actually expecting somebody to maybe mention that like there's a lot of talk now about humanity crashing in terms of population. So that also is not, you shouldn't take it, too seriously in the sense that like until 2100, we're still going to be somewhere between 8 and 10 or 8 and 11. What would happen after 2100? We have other things to worry before that. In the sense that there's so many things in the Earth system that are very, very troubling, climate change, tipping points, etc. So let's see how do we get there for now. Okay. Back to us. So we talked about change, and we talked about growth. Now the question about the past. So how do we do a quick sanity check on the past? So one way to approach it is to, you could take, a database, find somewhere a database. There's estimates for exactly what was the population of humanity with all sorts of different methods, and try to integrate it. Right? That's what we need to do, to integrate the population. Which is fine, but very often when you want to do such sanity checks, you don't have the time or to sit and download data and integrate, etc. Although you can do that, but I'm looking for something which is quicker to do. And for that, I suggest to try and break the problem into not think about necessarily the exponential growth, but just think about, say, some periods of time. So, for example, any suggestion how to try and break that problem? Yep.
Maybe do bins of certain 1,000 years and say like the average in these bins was this and this and this, and then you make an average of that.
I like it. Okay, so if you had like if this was the growth curve, you say let's take bins and do that. So how when was the agricultural revolution?
10,000 years ago.
Yeah, so I think 8,000 years or something like that, something like 10,000 years. Okay, so I could break it into bins of like 2,000 years, 2,000 years, 2,000 years, 2,000 years. That's a suggestion?
It's more or less, yes.
Smaller?
I would
200,
go
200,
smaller.
200,
I would go
200, 200,
smaller
200.
as we get closer. Like I would do from 10,000 years ago to 5,000 years ago one bin, because things didn't really exponential. Things didn't really change there, and then maybe like do them shorter now.
Okay, so I like it. I think that's also how I would approach it, in the sense that like you don't want to have it's good to break it into bins because that's easy to calculate. And you don't want too many or too few, but you also don't want it to be the same bins because there's a lot that has been, very little that happened over 1,000 years, around the agricultural revolution, and a lot has been happening in the last 1,000 years. And therefore the suggestion to do it in bins of different sizes. We could do last, let's say 10 years. And then we could do 100 years before that. And then 1,000 years before that. And then the 10,000 years before that. You see what I mean? I'm breaking down into 4 bins. Last decade, the century before, the millennia before, all the rest, which is 10,000 years, 8,000 years, whatever. Good. Last 10 years, what was the size of the population of humanity? So 10 years times how much?
7
Yeah, so we're like at 8 billion. Or 7 billion maybe if we take the average of the last 10 years. How much is that? It's roughly 10 to the 11 person year. Okay? Plus 100 years. What was the population on average in the last 100 years? Yeah, so roughly, I know, like somewhere between 1 and 2 billion. Which gives me another 10 to the 11 person years. Plus, if I take the 1,000 years before that, so now we're going like around Middle Ages or Roman Empire or something like that. How big was humanity? Hard to say.
10 to the 8th.
So about 10 to the 8th, I would say. About 100 million. Probably less than a billion.
By induction.
But you're only talking about people used as agriculture, which wasn't like all Africa and all
Okay, so good point here. Like there's a fraction of humanity that was, like already enjoying the agricultural revolution. It's really agro, and there's some that are still hunter-gatherers or something like that. Okay, I think negligible. Okay, it's again, it's like this. It's a good point, like a good comment, conceptually. But in terms of the numbers, I would be surprised if, let's say, out of those 100 million people that we're talking about, maybe it's like 20 million, maybe it's 1 million. It's not the dominant thing. Okay, so you can see I arranged the numbers just so it would be nice and fun. So it's also in the same spirit. And then I could say the 10,000 years before that. Again, I don't know what was the size of humanity 10,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago. I would say it wouldn't be outrageous to say that it's about 10 million. Okay, it's like, I don't know exactly, but in terms of order of magnitude, so we're getting again about 10 to the 11.
It doesn't matter, actually, because if it's less than that, then it's not significant. So it won't
Yeah, although maybe then I don't have this at all. Okay, what do I want to say? You can see if I sum these 4 things, it comes nicely to this number, but don't take it too seriously. I'm just enjoying myself to show that like it comes to the same thing. You can see that it comes up to being roughly similar, which means what about my sanity check?
6.
That it passed the sanity check, okay? Okay, for once, nobody was trying to fool us. It is really a true example of the challenge that we're facing as humanity, about the fact that really in the next 4 decades we'll need to produce as much food as all of our history since the agricultural revolution. Okay, and you see, some of the numbers here are not completely accurate, but that's fine. It just says, it's not easy for me, or I can't debunk the statement. And this is what sanity checks are needed in order to do.